Hey guys, it's Joel, and I wanted to do a video on how you can write psychologically consistent characters in fiction. A lot of the times the characters that you come across in fiction are kind of flat. You know, if you're a writer, if you like writing fiction like I do, you may be looking for some ways to kind of get out of writer's block, maybe get out of your head, or make your characters have a little bit more nuance or depth. So, I mean, one of the things that I think is important to look at is that none of us come from a vacuum. Like, a lot of us are a reaction to our childhood, right? And usually what happens is that we learn that we are what makes us lovable, or what our purpose is, from the parent of the opposite sex. So I may learn that my purpose is to be altruistic, or my purpose is to be creative, or that my worth comes from being productive. But then from the parent of the same sex, who are kind of looking to more to inform our functioning and our coping, we learn how to be in the world. So we learn from that parent, do I be anxious? Do I decompensate and get stressed out? Do I reach out for others for help? Do I go into my own head and then be by myself and try and figure this out? And so we're trying to fulfill that purpose, but that we get from the parent of the opposite sex, but with the tools that we learn for life by the parent of the same sex. And that's kind of a Freudian concept. You see that quite a bit, and it's kind of an interesting way to conceive of character, because a lot of the times those things are kind of at odds. Like, it looks like, well, this person cares about people and they're trying to help them, but they're kind of mean and a jerk and very forceful and an A-type person. Or, well, this person values growth and development and trying to help people, yet they're extremely closed-minded and black and white. And kind of interesting character comes from there being some sort of tension between the way that we are in the world and what we want to do in the world. And you see that a lot in great fiction. Another thing that I like to use to kind of get out of writer's block is to think about, and in therapy, because I use this in therapy, is to think about the parts of ourselves, right? So, we have these different parts of our personality. Like, we have an inner critic, and the inner critic says, when you leave a party, it's like, well, everyone laughed at your joke, but really they thought it was stupid. And you get that inner critic when you're, maybe 2 to 5, and you're learning that you can't just act on your emotions all the time and just get what you want. That you have to sometimes not go to the bathroom to get the piece of candy, or you have to, not throw your spoon when you're angry. And so we learn, well, I have to withhold what I want, and that is the responsible and the adult thing to do. But a lot of times we use that when it isn't helpful, and we need to learn to turn it off, when we just use it to beat ourselves up and entrench a depression. So, I mean, remembering that inner critic as part of your character's personality, I think, is a good way to write inner monologues a lot of the time. The second part of the personality that we get, and you can have multiple ones of these. I'm not going to go through all of them in this video. I mean, y'all kind of get the idea. But we have a pusher self. And that pusher self is just like, keep moving, don't slow down, keep going. One more email, one more Netflix episode, one more beer, one more phone call with a friend, one more text, one more Candy Crush. It doesn't care what you're doing. It just wants you to keep moving so that you don't slow down and feel that emotion that's underneath it, because that's what it's scared of. And we get that as social animals when we're in school. When we're growing up in school, and academically it's overwhelming, socially it's overwhelming, and we realize that it's not helpful for us to feel all of the feelings that we are having in school. We have to kind of turn that off and just figure something out and just go. And that's where that pusher self comes from, but a lot of times you see that come out as obsessions and addictions and compulsions in therapy. And so psychologically consistent characters are going to have these parts of the personality too. And they may have some more. Trauma will leave you with protective parts, anxiety and panic attacks, and avoidances that shut you down and say you can't deal with this, so don't go back to that place, that feeling. Another thing that I think is important is to kind of look at where those parts come from when you're designing what a character's backstory is, because we don't come from a vacuum, right? So something like humor, something that's like that intuitive spark, that kind of deconstructive, I'm going to read the room and figure out what people are thinking and what they want before they do, that's never going to develop in a vacuum. That's always going to be coming from a parentified child, somebody who doesn't get something that they need in childhood. And so they're kind of looking around the room and they're going like, all right, there's an issue here, how do I fix it, how do I figure it out? Before they're really ready to do that, they're already doing that, right? And so you get that kind of intuitive energy, like somebody with a strong sense of humor I mean, that's why humor is associated with out-groups a lot of times in American culture, is because they, at some point in childhood, felt like you don't want to know something about me, or something about me is bad, something about me won't be accepted, or I need you to know some information that maybe you don't want to know. And so I'm going to wrap it up for you in a package and a present and give it to you as a joke, so that you have to take it. You won't dislike it. And that may or may not be true in the family, that feeling. But if that feeling is there in the person, they're going to develop that ability. And if it isn't, they just won't. You know, a narcissist will not be funny. A narcissist will their jokes are just kind of broad stroke things about power, but they don't have genuine wit because they don't have that shame. They don't have that relationship with something not quite being right, and they don't develop that as a coping style early on. So, I mean, I like to kind of diagram all these things together, because a lot of times when you're being like, what happens in this situation, or what is the dialogue, what does the character think, what do they say, all of this stuff's going to help you get somewhere pretty interesting with your fictional characters, because it gets, you know, real people somewhere pretty interesting in therapy. Also, I think it's important to keep in mind an idea of the shadow. And that doesn't have to be Star Wars, that you're going to go on the hero's journey and fight the big evil and it's going to be part of yourself and integrate it. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. What I use the shadow for is, when you're writing a character, think about how this character has some information about themselves that they can't know. It conflicts with their self-image. And so they're not allowing themselves to see that. That can be, I did something bad, I view myself as a hero, but really in a certain situation I do this. There's something that character cannot let themselves in on about their own psychology. And where you get growth and development and change and crisis is usually going to involve that thing. And so figuring that out pretty early is going to give you a really good sense of what the structure of your character and the structure of your fiction is going to be. So anyway, I'm writing a book on this, so more to come, but those kind of broad strokes, some ideas if you're a creative writer, or if you're just interested in the psychology of character. So let me know what you think. I appreciate you guys listening, and I will talk to you later.